it's not about you. 5 words, simple, direct. But they hit like a hammer when you really let them sink in. See, most people hear that and think it's just some motivational quote on a poster, something a coach might shout in a locker room. But I want you to slow down and feel it, not just hear it, understand it. We are born into a world that tells us from day one, you are the center. You cry and someone feeds you. You fall and someone picks you up. You get older and the message keeps coming. Be the best, stand out, be seen. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with being excellent. Strive, push, work hard, shine. But the moment you start to believe the lie that everything is about you, that the world spins just to cater to your story, your feelings, your wins, your image, you've already lost. Let me ask you something. What happens when it's not your turn to win? What happens when someone else shines? Can you still clap for them? Can you still serve when no one's watching? Can you still lead when it costs you applause? See, the people who can't handle that sentence, it's not about you, are usually the ones trapped in an endless performance. They're exhausted and don't even realize it because they've mistaken visibility for value. But value doesn't come from being in the spotlight. It comes from what you bring to the moment, not how much you're seen in it. It's not about you doesn't mean you don't matter. It means you're part of something greater than your individual wants. It means you're not the author of the whole story. You're a powerful chapter in a much bigger book. And if you try to make the entire book about one character, it falls apart. The story gets stale. The hero becomes hollow. The truth is, when you make life all about you, your image, your timeline, your comfort, you actually shrink your potential. You limit your growth. Why? Because everything becomes personal. Every criticism feels like an attack. Every challenge feels like disrespect. Every time someone else wins, you feel like you lost. That's not living with purpose. That's living in a prison of ego. Now watch this. The moment you accept that it's not about you, something beautiful happens. You get free to grow, free to serve, free to listen, free to build something that outlives your name. The greatest leaders in the world, true leaders, aren't in it for applause. They're in it for impact. They understand something vital. Service is strength. When you live beyond yourself, you tap into a power that ego can never give you, a power that's built on legacy, not attention. And listen, this isn't just about grand speeches or stages. This is about how you show up every day, at work, at home, in your relationships. Can you put someone else's needs ahead of your own for a moment? Can you sit with someone in their pain without making it about your experience? Can you take feedback without folding or firing back? That's what maturity looks like. That's what real character looks like. And I know some people will resist this message. They'll say, but what about my goals, my dreams, my story? I hear you, I do. But I'm telling you, your story becomes richer the moment you realize it's connected to others. That your dream gets sharper when it serves more than just your ego. That your goals gain gravity when they lift people, not just your status. So if you want to grow, if you want to truly evolve, you have to let go of the idea that everything is about you. Because the person who understands this, the person who humbles themselves enough to say, this life isn't just mine, it's a gift I've been given to help others, that person becomes unstoppable. It's not about you. It's about the people you were called to help, the purpose you were born to fulfill, the lives you were meant to touch, the lessons you were meant to learn. So stand up, not to be seen, but to see others. Speak, not to be heard, but to uplift someone who's fallen silent. Move, not for attention, but with intention. Because when it's not about you, that's when you truly begin to live. You can't defeat what you don't understand. And when it comes to narcissism, most people are fighting shadows, pointing fingers without truly knowing what they're looking at. So let's clear the air. Let's put this thing on the table and talk about it plainly. Narcissism is more than someone who posts too many selfies or talks about themselves a little too much. That's surface level. Real narcissism is deeper. It's a mindset. It's a wound covered in gold paint. It's a personality structure that says, I must be seen as perfect to feel safe. And because of that, narcissists build their lives around one thing: control. They need to control how they're seen. They need to control the room they walk into. They need to control the narrative so they never have to face what's underneath, that deep, often hidden insecurity that they are not enough without applause, validation, or admiration. And here's where it gets dangerous. They're not always loud, not always arrogant in the way you'd expect. Sometimes narcissism walks in quietly, smiles big, says all the right things, and manipulates from behind the scenes. But at the core, at the root, it's always the same. It's a fear of being ordinary, a fear of being irrelevant. So they overcompensate, they perform, they demand loyalty without giving it back. They get defensive when corrected, and they take credit in public but assign blame in private. Now, I want you to listen closely. We all have a little narcissism in us. Every human being has moments of ego, pride, defensiveness. That's normal. That's human. But the difference is this. Do you have those traits, or do those traits have you? A true narcissist is someone who refuses to look inward, refuses to take responsibility, and refuses to grow unless it serves their image. They don't apologize unless it's a tactic. They don't help unless there's something in it for them. And they don't listen, but they wait to talk. Every conversation is a competition. Every relationship is a transaction. And everything good in their life, they somehow find a way to make it about them. So when you tell someone with narcissistic tendencies it's not about you, what you're really doing is pulling the mask off. You're saying, hey, it's time to stop performing, time to stop pretending, time to stop using people like props in your play. And you better believe they won't like that. They'll push back, they'll gaslight, they'll twist your words, they'll make you feel like you're the problem just for telling the truth. Because narcissism doesn't thrive on honesty. It thrives on illusion, on keeping others confused, indebted, or chasing their approval. And here's the most heartbreaking part. Many narcissists became that way out of pain. Somewhere along the road, they learned that being vulnerable got them hurt, that being wrong meant rejection, that love had to be earned through performance, not received through presence. So they built a persona, a perfect image, a false self, and over time, they forgot it was a mask. They started believing they are that mask, that they are the applause, the power, the position. But that's not real living. That's survival in disguise. And if you recognize any of this in yourself, it's not too late. This isn't about shame. This isn't about judgment. This is about freedom. The opposite of narcissism isn't self-hate. It's humility. It's truth. It's the courage to say, I don't have all the answers. I need help. I'm still learning. That's not weakness. That's strength. That's where real transformation begins. So let's bring it home. To truly understand narcissism, you have to see it for what it is. A false solution to a real wound, a loud mask hiding quiet fear, a hunger for validation trying to fill the absence of identity. And once you see it, really see it, you can stop feeding it. You stop feeding it in others by setting boundaries, by not falling for the charm without character, by refusing to be a fan in someone else's ego show. You stop feeding it in yourself by being honest about your motives, by being willing to grow, to be wrong, to put others first sometimes, not because you want credit, but because it's the right thing to do. Because life isn't a stage, and you're not the star. You're a servant, a leader, a student, a vessel. And the moment you drop the mask, whether it's yours or someone else's, you make space for something real to take its place. You make space for truth, for love, for connection, for legacy. So the next time someone says it's not about you, don't take it as an attack. Take it as a challenge to grow beyond ego, a challenge to live beyond the applause, a challenge to build a life that's rooted in truth, not just image. Because the world doesn't need more performers. It needs more people who are real, more people who understand that greatness isn't about being admired. It's about being accountable. There's a reason the sentence, "it's not about you," rattles certain people to their core. It's not just about ego. It's about identity. It's about how someone has built their entire sense of worth. And when that identity is rooted in being the center of everything, being the smartest, the most important, the one who's always right, then hearing those 5 words isn't just a correction, it feels like an attack. See, narcissists don't just want to be seen, they need to be seen, but not for who they truly are. No, they want to be seen for who they've carefully constructed themselves to appear to be. Image is everything to them. Reputation is more important than character. Control is more important than connection. So when someone says, it's not about you, it shakes the very foundation they're standing on. Think about it. If your confidence is built on applause, then silence feels like death. If your power comes from attention, then sharing the spotlight feels like betrayal. Narcissists aren't just avoiding accountability. They're avoiding the possibility that they are not the main character in every room. And that terrifies them. Why? Because the moment they accept that the world doesn't revolve around them, they have to face a question they've been running from. Who am I without the admiration? Who am I when I'm not in control? Who am I when nobody's clapping? That's why this sentence cuts so deep. It forces the narcissist to confront what they've tried so hard to hide, that their value can't be sustained by external validation, that attention doesn't equal worth, that dominance doesn't equal strength, that charm without character is just manipulation dressed up for dinner. And it doesn't stop there. You see, the narcissistic mindset often builds a story, and they're always the hero or the victim, never the villain. So when you say it's not about you, you're disrupting the script, you're flipping the story, and you better believe they'll resist that. They'll fight it. Not always with fists, but with guilt, with gaslighting, with passive-aggressive silence, or sweet-talking control. But here's what you need to understand. You're not fighting the person, you're fighting the illusion they live inside. This illusion says, if I'm not admired, I'm not valuable. It says, if I'm not winning, I'm worthless. It says, if people don't look up to me, then something is wrong. And that's the prison. That's the trap. It's not freedom, it's performance. Constant, exhausting performance. Narcissists spend more energy curating how they're perceived than actually becoming who they could be. And deep down, they know it. So what does "it's not about you" really do? It exposes the truth that real life doesn't care about your image, that the people who love you don't want your persona, they want your presence, that leadership isn't about being served, it's about serving, that impact doesn't come from control, it comes from contribution. That's why it's so uncomfortable for someone stuck in narcissism to hear those words. It's not just because it challenges their pride, it's because it threatens their entire coping mechanism. And when someone builds their identity on being adored, anything that feels like rejection, even truth, feels like war. But here's the twist. That sentence, that uncomfortable truth, it's also a doorway. If they choose to walk through it, they can find something far greater than praise. They can find purpose. They can find peace. They can find authenticity. Because the moment you stop trying to be the most admired, you can become the most impactful. The moment you stop chasing status, you can start building substance. But that choice, it takes humility. And humility to the narcissist feels like weakness because they've confused humility with humiliation. But humility isn't thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. It's shifting from what can I get from this moment to what can I give to it. That's the real challenge. That's the path to maturity. And make no mistake, this is hard, not just for narcissists, but for all of us. Every one of us wrestles with ego. Every one of us wants to be noticed, to be valued, to be applauded. That's human. But growth begins the moment we learn to put ego in its place. Not kill it, not shame it, but train it to serve instead of rule. So when you say it's not about you, don't say it to insult, say it to invite. Invite people into something bigger, into a life that isn't driven by image, but by integrity, into relationships that aren't built on control, but on connection, into leadership that doesn't demand followers, but raises leaders. Because in the end, the people who make the biggest impact aren't the ones who chase the spotlight. They're the ones who hold the light steady so others can shine too. That's what this sentence really does. It strips away the illusion, and in its place, it plants a seed of truth, a seed that says there's more to you than your image. But you'll never find it until you let go of needing to be everything to everyone. And if you're brave enough to accept that, if you're strong enough to humble yourself, then you'll discover the freedom and power that ego can never give you. Because real power isn't about being worshipped. It's about being willing to change. Narcissism looks like confidence, but it's not. It looks like strength, but it's not. It's fear, plain and simple, but not just any kind of fear. It's the fear of being invisible, the fear of being forgotten, the fear of being exposed as not enough. That's the engine under the hood. All that pride, that control, that need to dominate every conversation, that's not power, it's panic. A quiet, unspoken panic that says, if I'm not seen as exceptional, I'm nothing. That's why narcissists can't take criticism, not even gentle feedback, because it threatens the fragile foundation their self-worth is built on. When you point out a flaw, you're not just pointing at a behavior, they hear it as a verdict. They hear it as rejection, as abandonment, because the fear beneath the mask is screaming, if people see my weakness, they'll leave. So they build a fortress, a wall of perfection, of always being right, of never needing help. They curate their identity like a brand, always polished, always impressive, always in control. But what they don't realize is that they've become trapped in that image. They're no longer living, they're maintaining a performance. And the more fragile they feel inside, the louder they get outside. Now listen, this is important. That fear didn't come from nowhere. Most narcissists didn't just wake up one day and decide to be difficult. Somewhere along the line, they were hurt, abandoned, criticized. Maybe it was a parent who only showed love when they achieved. Maybe it was a trauma that told them never show weakness. Maybe they learned that being vulnerable meant being hurt. So they decided, I'll never let that happen again. And from that that day on, they built the persona, the perfect version of themselves, the successful one, the charming one, the one that always wins. But it was never real. It was armor, protection, a mask they glued to their face so well they forgot it was a mask. But the fear, it never left. It just got buried. And the more they buried it, the more controlling they became, the more demanding, the more desperate for validation. Because if people stop clapping, if people stop admiring, that mask starts to crack. And when it cracks, the fear comes pouring out. That's why narcissists react so violently to being told it's not about you, because it confirms the one thing they're terrified to believe: you're not the center. You're not entitled. You're not exempt from accountability. And that's terrifying when your self-worth is built on always being right. But here's the deeper truth. That fear isn't something to be ashamed of. Fear is human. Fear is natural. It's what you do with the fear that defines your character. Some people face their fear. They wrestle with it. They seek help. They let others in. They grow. But narcissism refuses to face fear. Instead, it builds a castle of mirrors, a place where only praise is allowed, where truth is silenced, where accountability is labeled disrespect. It's fear wearing a crown, and you can't heal what you refuse to feel. Here's the irony. The very thing narcissists are afraid of, being unloved, being unseen, is what they create. Because when you live in fear, you push people away. You sabotage trust. You destroy connection, all to protect the illusion of strength. But strength isn't in perfection. It's in humility, in vulnerability, in saying, I'm scared, but I'm still showing up. That's what real courage looks like. So let me speak to the person who sees some of this in themselves. If you're tired of performing, tired of pretending, tired of living for applause instead of truth, you don't have to keep living in fear. You don't have to be the loudest in the room to matter. You don't have to be admired to be loved. You don't have to be flawless to be worthy. The fear inside you, you're not the only one who feels it, but you have a choice. You can either keep covering it up with ego, or you can face it with honesty. And if you're someone dealing with a narcissist in your life, remember this: what looks like arrogance is often insecurity in disguise. What sounds like dominance is often fear trying to sound like confidence. That doesn't mean you excuse the behavior, but it means you stop taking it personally. You stop getting pulled into their storm. You stand in truth. You hold your boundary. You protect your peace, because someone else's fear doesn't have to become your burden. So when you speak truth, when you say this isn't just about you, understand that you're not starting a fight. You're offering freedom. They may not take it. They may reject it, but at least you're standing in the light. Because when fear runs the show, nobody wins. But when truth takes over, healing begins. And that's what this is all about. Not judgment, not shame, but calling fear by its name and choosing something greater than performance, choosing freedom, choosing growth, choosing to live from purpose, not from panic. That's where real power is, not in being the loudest, but in being the most real. When you're dealing with narcissistic behavior, you have to understand something. You can't play chess with someone who flips the board every time they're losing. You can't argue with someone who rewrites the rules to protect their pride. And you sure can't heal someone who's convinced they're never wrong. So the question becomes, how do you respond? You respond not with noise, but with clarity, not with chaos, but with boundary, not by trying to fix them, but by focusing on what you can control yourself. See, a narcissist thrives on reaction. They feed off confusion. If they can keep you explaining yourself, doubting yourself, chasing their approval, they've won. That's the game. Because as long as they can keep you emotionally off balance, they stay in control. And the moment you stop playing that game, that's when the tables turn. Let me be clear. You're not here to fix anyone's wounds if they don't want to heal. You're not responsible for someone else's emotional maturity. Your job is not to shrink yourself just to keep someone else comfortable in their illusion. Your job is to protect your peace, walk in truth, and stay rooted in your integrity. When you say it's not about you to a narcissist, don't expect a calm response. Expect deflection, expect guilt trips, expect manipulation. They'll try to twist your truth into an attack. But that's when you stay centered. You don't match their chaos. You don't raise your voice. You don't beg to be understood, because sometimes silence is louder than shouting. You let your boundaries speak. A narcissist will call your boundaries disrespect. They'll call your peace attitude. They'll call your no betrayal. But that's not your problem. That's their discomfort meeting your strength. And don't you dare water down your power just to soothe someone's insecurity. If someone can't respect your no, they were never truly honoring your yes. Let me tell you something powerful. Your silence, your distance, Your refusal to explain yourself for the 100th time? That's not weakness, that's wisdom. See, the strongest people aren't the loudest ones in the room. They're the ones who know when to speak and when to walk away. They're the ones who know that every battle isn't worth fighting and every insult isn't worth catching. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Just a calm decision followed by action, because narcissists don't learn from confrontation, they learn from consequence. You don't need to scream, "Respect me," just remove access. You don't need to argue for honesty, just stop engaging with lies. You don't need to beg for appreciation, just start pouring into people who already see your worth. And that's where the healing starts. When you stop waiting for validation from broken places and start walking in your own God-given identity, you start realizing that peace isn't passive, it's powerful, that boundaries aren't rude, they're necessary, that love isn't about losing yourself, it's about protecting what's sacred inside you. Don't get it twisted. This doesn't mean you move in bitterness. This doesn't mean you wish them harm. No, it means you wish them healing from a distance. You forgive so that you can breathe, not so they can come back. You let go, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve freedom. And that freedom, it's found in choosing truth over image, reality over illusion. It's saying, I see who you pretend to be, but I'm no longer willing to play along. That takes strength, that takes maturity, that takes courage, because narcissists will always test your limits. They'll love bomb, guilt trip, gaslight. They'll make you question your own mind. But once you see the pattern, once you know the playbook, it's on you to choose differently. You stop trying to make them see. You stop shrinking to be loved. You stop explaining your boundaries to people committed to crossing them. Instead, you walk forward unapologetically. Let them call you cold. Let them say you changed. That's fine. Growth looks like betrayal to people who only loved the version of you they could control. So how do you respond to narcissistic behavior? With discernment, not drama, with boundaries, not battles, with wisdom, not war, and most of all, with a quiet confidence that you don't have to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. You've got one life. Don't waste it managing someone else's ego. Don't spend your energy trying to fix what doesn't want to be repaired. Let your peace be your protest. Let your silence be your strength, and let your distance be the reminder that you're not here to orbit around someone else's insecurity. You were born to shine with purpose, to stand in truth, and to lead with quiet fire. So if someone ever asks you, why aren't you playing along anymore? You look them in the eye and say, because I finally realized it's not about you. And then you walk away like the storm never shook you. Because it didn't, not anymore. So here we are, after all the noise, after all the image, after all the gaslighting, guilt-tripping, deflection, and disguise. What are we left with? The truth. And the truth is simple, but it ain't easy. It's not about you. That's the sentence that breaks the illusion. That's the mirror narcissists avoid. That's the line they never want to cross, because once they do, they're forced to confront something terrifying, that the world doesn't revolve around them, and it never did. And maybe that sentence stings, maybe it feels like rejection, but in reality, it's an invitation to grow, to heal, to live beyond performance and step into purpose. Because narcissism isn't power, it's fear dressed up in control. It's insecurity wearing the mask of confidence. It's the desperate cry of a person who's afraid to be average, afraid to be human, afraid to be seen without the applause. But real strength is being able to hear it's not about you, and instead of fighting it, learning from it, real strength is humbling yourself enough to say, I've been making everything about me, but now I choose different. And for those of you who've had to deal with the weight of narcissism, who bent yourself backwards just to be seen, who've walked on eggshells to keep the peace, who've questioned your own mind trying to love someone who only loved their reflection, let this be your reminder. You don't owe anyone your silence to keep their illusion alive. You don't owe anyone your peace to protect their pride. You don't have to lose yourself to prove your loyalty. You are not here to orbit someone else's ego. You are here to rise, to grow, to lead, to love deeply, but never at the cost of your identity. So whether you're breaking the pattern or building the courage to speak up, or simply learning to love yourself without needing to be needed, remember this: you are not the narcissist. You are not their project. You are not their punching bag. And you are not responsible for saving someone who keeps drowning in their own reflection. The sentence they fear the most, it's not about you, might just be the sentence that saves you the most. So speak it, stand on it, live by it, and let the world see not the performer, not the peacekeeper, not the fixer, but you in your full truth, power, and purpose. Because the moment you stop living for validation is the moment you start living for real. And that's not ego, that's evolution. And that is where freedom begins.